Facebook Live. So if you do not want to be recorded, feel free to turn your camera off, or alternatively, you may go ahead and leave and then catch the recording later on, as it will be up on our Facebook page. So we'll leave it at that and let a couple more people get in, and then we'll get started.
Right, so.
It doesn't look like I actually have the ability to send it to the Facebook page, so that's a shame, but can deal with that later.
All right, shall we kick off, Caroline? Everyone? More people can enter in as we go. Very good. So just a quick word from me. My name is Austin Blair. I'm the chair of the Democrats Abroad UK LGBTQ Caucus. I know there's a million other things that you could be doing with your Thursday evening, so I just want to start by saying thank you, and thank you for coming and spending an hour with us. It is certainly much appreciated. I know when we initially were talking about ideas of how we could promote this event, we were thinking about calling it a happy hour. So I certainly won't be offended if anyone gets up to go and pour themselves a glass of wine for buckling in for the next hour. But truly, I believe that there has never been a more important moment for the conversation that we are going to be having this evening. So truly, from the bottom of my heart and from the rest of the panelists' hearts as well, thank you for being here. At this time, I will now pass over to our moderator for the evening, who is also a good friend of mine from Democrats Abroad UK, representing us up in Scotland, Caroline Richney, to explain some of the House rules, and then we'll get started.
All right, good evening, everybody. We're just going to go over a few House rules before we get started on our program for this evening. If everybody wouldn't mind muting your mics, that would be incredibly helpful. We would appreciate it very much. If you have a question, please either type in the chat box, * hand up. If you want to ask your question out loud, thank you, Brett, for demonstrating, or type your question in the chat box. Brett has kindly offered to do the chat box for this evening, so he will be keeping tabs on that. We will have time for a general Q&A at the end of the session, but we're going to start with our panelists. So if I could just get our panelists up here, I will ask them all to introduce themselves. Where's Martha? There you are. Thank you. All right, I'm gonna start with Martha. If you could introduce yourself, please.
Thanks, Caroline. My name is Martha Pugh. I am a Oakland, California voter living in the Netherlands. I'm currently the vice chair of the Democrats Abroad LGBTQ Caucus. I was also the founder of that caucus. Might tell a little bit more about that later. And I live outside of Amsterdam in Zaanstad. I'm also a member of the DNC representing Democrats Abroad, a member of the DNC LGBTQ, now that we had a Q, which we added recently, caucus. And I was a couple weeks ago elected to the executive committee of the LGBTQ caucus at the DNC.
That's amazing. All right, thank you, Martha. I'm now going to pass it over to Sam. Would you please introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you, Caroline. My name is Sam Hallman. My pronouns are he, him, and I am the somewhat new LGBTQ Coalitions Director for the Democratic National Committee. Super excited to be joining y'all. Before this, I worked for 5 years at Planned Parenthood on their national political team and doing some international work with them as well. So really glad to be here with my Dems Abroad friends to discuss all things 2022.
Excellent. And then Austin, if you want to just give a quick bio. I know you introduced yourself as the new chair, but I know you've got more to say.
Yes, I always do. So my name, once again, is Austin Allaire. My pronouns are he, him. I am an Iowa voter from Ames, Iowa, living here in London. Recently stepped into this new role as the chair of the UK Country Committee's LGBTQ plus caucus, in addition to my role as a voting representative on the Democratic Party Committee abroad. So those are the kind of different things that I'm involved in, and really looking forward to this conversation and to hearing more from my fellow panelists.
Excellent. And I'm going to be your moderator tonight. My name is Caroline Ruchene. I live in Scotland, and I am from and still vote in the state of New Jersey. I am on the executive committee of DAUK. I've been helping out with the LGBT caucus for about a year now. I was the former chair of the Scotland chapter, and I also serve as a deputy RVC for the EMEA region. So you've probably, if you haven't seen me, I have been in the background running your Zoom meetings. So it's nice to see you all. So this is something that I'm very excited about, and I would like to get started with our panelists and hear what they have to say about some of these really interesting and important topics for the LGBT community coming up. So the first section we're calling State of Play. And we've got a good news and a bad news section. So let's start with the good news, because we want everyone to be in a good mood to start with this. So we want to talk about the Biden-Harris actions to date. There's been a lot of discussion about anti-LGBTQ plus bills being passed in state houses across the country, and we'll get to those later. But first, we want to discuss some of the progress which has been made on behalf of the LGBTQ plus community under the Biden-Harris administration. So Sam, I think if you want to get started with this.
Sure. And I would thank you, Caroline. Also very excited to be here with y'all today. And before jumping into the Biden administration LGBTQ specifics, I would just be really remiss if not to acknowledge the soon to be Associate Supreme Court Justice, who is finishing up her testimony right now, Ketanji Brown Jackson, who's just been absolutely brilliant and is the perfect example of why elections have consequences. And ensuring that we have representation in all branches of government is absolutely critical work. And the Biden-Harris administration has kept their commitment to be the most pro-equality and LGBTQ administration that we've really ever seen. And it's really been a demonstration for the first time as to what a whole of government response can and could look like for the LGBTQ community. There are so many things to touch upon that this administration has advanced through executive action, from the historic appointments of Pete Buttigieg, Rachel Levine, Gina Ortiz-Jones, Rufus Gifford, to various roles in government, the first ever lesbian ambassador appointed. We've just seen a commitment in staff as to what, or an access as the LGBTQ community to government in a way that's just never existed before. But within the first 100 days, the Biden-Harris administration took historic action to essentially make sure that LGBTQ people could be protected by every power possible with executive power within the government. And that was from Title IX in our federal education statutes. That was from in the Fair Housing Act. That was in the Immigration and Nationality Act. That was ensuring that we had non-binary gender markers on passports. That was overturning the trans military ban so that our trans and non-binary folk could again access their military benefits and healthcare, which we know are critical to their gender expression and ability to identify as who they are. And all of these things just really represent the direct commitment to our community. And I'll wrap up by saying that even in the things that we don't, or most people don't think of as traditionally LGBTQ issues, right? Fighting for paid leave and our ability to take that time, fighting for access to affordable housing, fighting for access to food and nutrition. Those are all things that members of the LGBTQ community are at exceptionally and extremely more risk of suffering from because of how we are treated within government and within our economy. and the lack of protections that we've historically had. So a commitment to fighting for an equitable economy and an economy that works for everyone is an LGBTQ issue. And I always like to end on that because I feel like we never hear about that part, right, in our community. And so it's just really important to remind ourselves that all of these things have such a dramatic impact on our quality of life. Oh, Caroline, I think you're on mute.
There we go, fixed it. Definitely, we have to remember that so much of this stuff is all intersectional and comes to meet in different ways. All of this stuff connects. So I really like that. Thank you for bringing that up, Sam. Martha, from your perspective of Democrats abroad, what are some of the key areas of progress that you see affecting Americans abroad in the LGBTQ plus community?
Yeah, thanks. And I'll just pick up on what Sam just said about how elections matter, whether it's from the Supreme Court or whether it's from executive action. So those of us who are LGBTQ plus and who live abroad, and actually any of us who live abroad are impacted by questions around citizenship and immigration. If we have families of mixed nationalities, I have an Australian wife, I have a Dutch stepson, I have grandkids, all those kinds of things have their complexities. And one of the things that happened pretty much out of the gate from the Biden administration is something that had been an issue for our community for a long time. And that was around the access to citizenship for kids that are born abroad to American families, but where one partner is a non-citizen and where around the parenting and asking for citizenship for the children that were born abroad. So typically that's pretty smooth for heterosexual couples because a lot of assumptions are made that both parents are the biological parent. But for same-sex couples, there's really additional scrutiny that was applied, and it was really something that was administrative. Like it didn't need any kind of a legislative change, but it was in the policy that citizenship was being denied to some of these kids that were being born abroad. And, one of our partner organizations that we've worked with throughout the years, Immigration Equality, had brought, 4 court cases representing 4 different situations, like even twins who were born to the same surrogate, but who one of them got US citizenship and another one didn't, having to do with DNA, right? The kinds of tests that were applied. And so, this is something that we worked on in 2020. The Senate Foreign Relations Committee, actually, after engaging with us, passed a resolution asking the secretary, asking Pompeo to look into this as Secretary of State. And the Biden administration made that change in the administrative policy, very soon after that administration came into power. Has made such a difference for our families because it means that that our 2 women or 2 men who are parenting and who have a child are able to ask for citizenship in a way that's very, very much like a heterosexual couple. So those are kinds of things that affect us who are specifically abroad in a different way than they affect our community in the United States. So it's something that Democrats abroad really has always had attention to, and this was a really, really nice win for us.
That's amazing. I know personally, I'm the child of queer parents, so it's just amazing to hear stories like that because people don't think about the extra hoops that we have to jump through just to have normal lives like everybody else. And people don't see our families. Our families are invisible, and it's just really nice to be seen sometimes. All right, so we can move on to some of the struggles that we're having at the moment, the bad news part, but this is really important, and this is where we're going to talk about calls to action as well. So we would be remiss if we were only focusing on the good stuff. So let's talk about the bills. Everyone knows what we're talking about, the state Senate bills that Republicans are pushing through in, it seems, all parts of the country. Sam, why don't you take a moment to address this?
Sure. The part that, we don't want to talk about, but we probably should and need to make sure is a priority for us as we do this work moving forward. Partners, we've just seen a terrible state legislative session for the LGBTQ community back in the States. We're tracking currently the movement, the coalition is tracking over 300 anti-LGBTQ bills introduced in states across the country, really focused on 30 states, exactly where you'd expect them to be. instead of focusing on just like the real issues that affect people, right? They're choosing to push an agenda that is extreme and ostracizes mostly trans children from feeling safe in school, from being able to access gender-affirming healthcare in consultation with their parents and healthcare providers, going as far as changing state civil rights laws to exclude us where we have been included. And it's just been quite the gambit. 300 bills at once is a lot. It's an average of like 7 to 15 bills a state. And I know we'll probably get into talking about that, but it's an intentional strategy to overwhelm and overrun. They are pushing forward an agenda and seeing how far they can move the line on these issues by just flooding state legislatures with whatever they can do. We've seen it historically in the movement for access to abortion in the last 5 years, and we're seeing it now on the LGBTQ issue front. So the state of play is concerning, and there's a lot of work that we need to be doing to not only mobilize to win elections so that this doesn't happen anymore at the state and the local level, but as well push back now and make sure people know that there are folks out there that are going to hold them accountable for the decisions that they're making in state legislatures. So the state of play, lots to discuss, I'm sure. I'll kick it back over to you, Caroline.
Yeah, I know a lot of people feel this way as well, but the fact that they're targeting LGBTQ children, especially trans children, is just really upsetting because they have absolutely no say and no way of protecting themselves. So the rest of the community has to be there and has to step up and protect them because those kids are deserving of protection. All right, Austin, I understand that this is personal for you. Legislators in your home state have signed an anti-LGBTQ sports ban. How has this been impacting you, and what are you hearing from folks back home?
Yeah, that's a great question, Caroline. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm from the state of Iowa, and back home, Republican legislators in the House and the Senate have passed an anti-trans sports bill, which has then been subsequently signed into law. And in effect, what this means is a really kind of radical step of exclusion for some of our society's most vulnerable people, which are young transgender children who have had the courage, in a lot of cases, to come out and to share that information, and who really want to live a life that is normal, and to go to high school like a normal kid and play sports like a normal kid and be on the field. And when I think about this, I think high school is hard enough, right? Without having Republican state legislators coming after you, attacking you, making you feel excluded. And what I'm hearing from folks back home is people like the neighbors of my mom who are considering leaving the state because Iowa's not a place of belonging anymore. Think about that. Think about a family having to consider uprooting their children from their community, nearby family, all that they've ever known, because there's a state legislature in charge that has chosen to target some of society's most vulnerable. And even beyond that, there's people who are just people of conscience, like my mom, who's not, both of her sons are cisgender, and she herself is not transgender, but she's so sickened by what she's seeing in the state legislature that she herself is considering where else might she go in order to find a politics of an inclusion and belonging. And I think that's what people are crying out for, is a politics of inclusion, a politics of belonging, a politics that's not so divisive, especially divisive at the expense of society's most vulnerable. So that's what I'm hearing from folks back home, and it is quite upsetting. You can see I get a little bit emotional about it. But I think this ties in, and to tie into kind of a call to action with some of the work that we've been doing here in the UK as a part of the UK LGBTQ Plus Caucus. So over the course of the last year, we've developed a relationship with Mermaids, which is an excellent organization. And we've been able to kind of use our platform and use the Global Caucus's platform to spotlight the great work that they're doing here in our own backyard in the UK. We also were able to pass a resolution at the DPCA global meeting last year, condemning some of these sorts of bills when we were seeing them in the state legislatures last year. So just for folks on the call, like the call to action here is get involved with your country committee LGBTQ plus caucus. And if your country committee doesn't yet have one, get on board with the Global Caucus or start one up yourself, because I think that the more that we can organize as a community, even as people who are living abroad, we're still impacted by this emotionally. We're still impacted this in terms of our family and our friends. So the more that we can organize, even as folks who are physically outside of the United States, to advocate in a more positive direction, I think is really important, especially as we're looking forward to the midterms and to 2022.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all of that. Should also maybe point out that there are a bunch of newly formed states teams at the global level. So because we're talking about local state legislation, please join your state team if there is one. And if there isn't one, maybe think about creating one. I know some of our big target states that have been doing bad things, I'm talking about you, Texas, have a state team already. So please join them and make this a focal point of the work, because this is important. This is people's lives. This is children's lives. And we really need to do our best to protect them. All right, so we're going to move on to organizing for 2022 and really get in the weeds and talk about what we can do this year to help our community back home. So Martha, would you mind giving us a DNC update?
Sure, yeah. Where to start on 2022? 2022 is a year in which democracy is at stake. And, we all got that in 2018, right? And we worked our asses off, and we worked that way in 2020 because we knew that was the case. Well, that's still the case, right? More than ever. The examples that were just given about how the lives of transgender children are used by Republicans as a wedge issue, right? It's not about people's lives, but it's about winning, says a lot about who the Republican Party is and who they're being. So I think that we just have to really, keep in mind that, we all know this is a midterm year, but this is really, really about making those connections, having those conversations, and doing, everything we can to get out the vote. So we had our first live DNC meeting with the elected representation of the DNC since the first one since August 2019 in Washington, D.C. 2 weeks ago. I just can't say enough how important it is for all of us, and maybe we've forgotten how that is, but to meet together physically and have those conversations, right, with each other, to connect and to plan and to strategize, all that kind of thing. And we did that very intensively because, we never appreciated it as much as we do now. So, we were really focused on, what's happening with the congressional maps, right? That's still some of that is still in movement and in flux. What do we need to do? How do we need to turn out our constituencies? And so that includes, all of the caucuses and all the councils and all constituencies of the DNC. And it's a different webinar to talk about how the DNC works. So I hope that you all will come to our town hall where we're going to debrief on the DNC meeting, which is, I think that invitation is going to come out really soon. But certainly as an LGBT, caucus, we're really clear that our issues, whether we like it or not, are going to be put front and center in this election year. So it's really important that I think that we not just react to it, like we can't answer the kinds of things that are being put out there. We're being used in a certain way. So it really requires a kind of a response for us to stand for something. And it's not just standing for trans kids or standing for our community or standing with our allies or doing any of this. We need to do all the stuff that we've always done, right? But it's really about how do we really, do everything that we can, and how do we create the urgency in this election, right? How do we create the urgency? We've all been, at home or not making that effort. We're not used to making that effort anymore to knock on a door or connect with people, but we really have to turn that on again, turn up the volume and speak out and connect. And really, whether it's with, other voters who are abroad, whether it's other DA members, whoever it is, with our friends and family, and just all those contact points, every contact, every touch, every conversation, bring that urgency in and really talk about how important this election is. And obviously, with so many, dozens and hundreds of bills that are impacting the lives of our community, and also legislation that is stalled, like the Equality Act. that hasn't been able to get through the Senate. You know, aside from all of that, it's just really, really important, you know, that we have the kind of Congress, and you know, I'm hopeful about the Senate, right? We need to really do the work there to make sure that we have enough senators that we can actually get things done. And so I think that, you know, I mean, there's, you know, I could go on, and I hope people will come to the town hall next week, but there's a lot to say, you know, about what we are and how we have to show up and our commitment to democracy and what we have to do this year to make sure that we you know, live in the kind of world that we want to live in.
I really like that. We need to turn up the volume sentiment. I think a lot of times have a tendency to kind of sit back and not want to make our lives a political issue, but the problem is that they are, and we're not the ones making them a political issue. It's the other side. So this is one of those years where we have the opportunity to stand up for ourselves, to stand up for our young people, and it's by voting and by getting your community out to vote for you. And that means not just in the big elections, but in the small ones, if you are able. Those are so important. All right, Sam, what can you tell us about the DNC's overall strategy for the midterms this year?
I mean, yeah, I think Martha got the top lines pretty down pat. Only thing I will add to what Martha just said, you know, we take this frame that like every election is a critical election, right? And the next election is always the most critical one. And sort of just, we lose ourselves a little bit in that, right? And the way that our chair Jamie Harrison puts it, it's that, no, it's while I breathe, I vote. And we've just got to start taking that mentality that like, we must be showing up every opportunity we get as individuals to express that right, because it makes our democracies stronger, our government better, and ensures we have a seat at the table. In terms of organizing, we are focused in on 8 states. They're the states you've probably become very familiar with over the last 4 to 6 years. So North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, New Hampshire. Happy to circulate those in writing as well. I know I just sort of sped through them. Are going to be our 8 target states as we move forward and develop our electoral programming. The DNC has already made a $20 million investment in those states, including $8 million in organizing and coalition staff to be on the ground doing that work now. It'll be the largest midterm year that the Democratic Party has ever invested in, we believe. We'll see, hopefully, by the time we're done. And on the theme of protecting our democracy, it'll be one of the largest investments we made in voter protection. This early on. We have committed to having a voter protection director in every target state and in every state possible in this next election cycle, which is huge, and ensuring that we have the resources and necessary volunteers and poll watchers to be present so that we can be protecting people's right to vote just as much as mobilizing our voters. In terms of LGBTQ organizing, we're focusing in on 3 priorities. We'll be rolling out signature programming very soon at another town hall that I hope I'll see all of you at. As we start to engage, but really 3 major tenets, right? We want to need to strengthen the existing LGBTQ caucus and Democratic clubs that we've got at our state, local, international Democrats abroad parties, and build out the infrastructure where we don't. It is not present everywhere within our community, and we've got to find and identify people who want to drive this work forward for us. There's no one that can organize their community better than someone from their community, right? Like, I will never know better than someone living in the community that they're from. So ensuring that they have the resources and feel empowered to do that, and creating a caucus, as you've heard many times today, is huge and an instrumental first step to build out that infrastructure so that we can be mobilizing voters. The second is we've just got to tell on the LGBTQ issues, as Martha touched on, a better story, right? The differences are stark between the Republican and Democratic Party right now on LGBTQ issues. They could not be more clear. And articulating that this party is going to be the party for LGBTQ Americans today, tomorrow, and in perpetuity is really, really important in this moment. I'll be honest, there was a long time that the Democratic Party wasn't generally as friendly to LGBTQ people, right? That wasn't something that was politically accepted by any mainstream politics. And so the fact that we've been able to break through, we've got to cement that in the narrative and frame as we do this work moving forward. And then finally, We've got to ensure that we are mobilizing people that have felt disempowered, disenfranchised by the strategies that we've seen to exclude people from voting. Like, that is the work of coalitions and the movement, is to bring new people in, as well as mobilize the folks that have always been targeted, right? We've got to make sure that we're showing up in communities of color and the LGBTQ community, and meeting people where they are, and showing them that we are committed as Democrats to being here not just September to November, but year round. And we're going to be here and present and show them what it means to be a Democrat. So I think those are the three big things that you'll see out of us across both the LGBTQ work and the work writ large. And super excited to partner with Austin. So excited to have Martha in the leadership of the National DNC LGBTQ Caucus moving forward to help us drive this work and be your voice. And get it done in 2022, y'all. We've got work to do.
That's amazing. And honestly, like, we couldn't have better representation than Martha. So thank you so much for representing us. Austin, do you want to give us a DAUK caucus update? So what's going on here in the UK with our LGBTQ caucus?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to do that. So first of all, just want to reiterate what Sam and Martha have said. I think that they've clearly set the table for what the stakes are and then how it is that we're actually going to engage. And much like Sam's 3-point plan, I come bearing a 3-point plan of my own, because every great plan comes with 3 pillars, right? But kind of when I came into this position as the new chair of the LGBTQ plus caucus and was thinking, what should we be about? What should we be about, considering we're kind of relaunching this and reinvigorating this caucus in a midterm election year? And what I came up with was that the LGBTQ plus caucus of Democrats Abroad UK exists to act, educate, and celebrate in the interests of LGBTQ Americans both at home and abroad. So taking each of those in terms of action, I think that action is really so central to the story of queer liberation. It is indeed a part of our community's DNA. And not only that, it's also effective. Activism changes public sentiment, it changes politics, it changes policy. And so how you're going to see us doing this year, I think of it like 2 pedals on a bicycle. You kind of need both in order to make any progress forward. We're going to do issue-specific activism. So we're going to organize when we see state legislatures which are going out and attacking trans youth, which we've already done. We are going to organize when we see other things happening on Capitol Hill or even in local places. We're going to partner with some of those state committees, which Caroline, you mentioned earlier. And so that's kind of one pedal on the bicycle. And the other one is real activism around getting out the vote. And we're going to have, even at the end of this call, one of our great voting champions is going to share with us how you can make sure that you are registered to vote and that your vote gets counted this year in 2022. So we have both of those things going forward, and that's how we're going to act in this year. But we're also going to educate. And this is a great example of that. We're going to have webinars and have opportunities, hopefully some in person very soon, as well, where we can kind of set the table, like, what is the state of play? Have these conversations. What is the strategy? What are we going to be doing? So we're going to do these types of events. We'll have panel discussions or highlight organizations like Mermaids that we're working with, and we're proud of the work that we're doing, and potentially bring in some guest speakers as well. And then finally, we're going to celebrate, because I think that celebration is really also quite central to kind of our story as a community. And when we celebrate, we think about all the progress that's been made over the past 75 years. And even over the past, I think about my own lifetime, the past 25 years. And we honor kind of the heroes of the community, but we also look forward to a future that's better than where we are today. And so we do this when we get together for Pride every year. And so we're going to make a big deal out of Pride this year. If you're on the call and you are in the UK or you're in London, we want to put out the invite, and I'm announcing this now. We want to put out the invite to come and march with us in the London Pride Parade on July 2nd. We're super excited. More details forthcoming, but do mark down your calendar because we want to be visible. We want to be visible in the community, and we want to make sure that all of that then feeds back to making sure that we have everyone voting here in these very, very, very crucial midterm elections. So I am very optimistic about what we're doing here as a country committee, and I know there are lots of great things also being planned at the global DAUK caucus level, at the DNC LGBTQ plus caucus, and then also in other caucuses and pockets where our community is organizing in other country committees and in other states. So I believe that together, many hands make light work, and we're certainly going to be able to turn out our community as we look towards November.
Excellent. Well, I know I'm really excited to get involved in all of this. And to be honest, like the LGBTQ community, we got to celebrate ourselves because other people not going to do it. So that's fine. We've got enough party for everybody. Let's talk about calls to action now. So these are actual things that you can get done. So I know a lot of people, especially like I know myself, can get really upset and just start kind of shutting down when you hear of all of this stuff coming through, like the state legislative stuff attacking trans kids. And it seems like there isn't anything that you can do. So I want to go through and talk to y'all about what we can do as Democrats abroad to help in these situations, because we really need people to step up and act right now. It's not a time for sitting on the sidelines. So Austin, what would be your #1 call to action?
Well, as always, my #1 call to action is vote, vote, vote. And if you're abroad, make sure you filed your FPCA and you have all your paperwork in, and we will have someone right after this who is going to explain how you can do that, because that is like step 1. That's actually step 0. So step 1, then I think if you're on this call and you are a member of the LGBTQ plus community or an ally of the community, join your local LGBTQ plus caucus. So I know we've got people on the call, both within the UK, but then also some in other countries. Join that caucus. If there's not one there, be a leader, start one up. I'd love to talk to you about how to do that, because it's people get intimidated by it, but it's really easy and it's a lot of fun. And I'd love to help you out with that. But being a part of these local communities, these local pockets of people who share a similar background, a similar identity, a similar story, I think that provides us with kind of the fuel that we need in order to be engaged in these fights. And then it also provides a platform to be engaged where it matters most, right? So I'm talking about what we're doing here in the UK in terms of some of our events and some of our partnerships. That's going to vary country by country, state by state. But I think that that provides a really excellent platform to make sure that you're connected, you're in on the ground floor, you know what's happening, and then you can kind of take additional steps from there. So I think that would be my rapid fire, which wasn't actually so rapid fire, call to action.
Awesome. Thanks, Austin. Martha, what would be your #1 call to action?
Well, I mean, certainly to start with, speak up, share what matters about you, share what motivates you to vote in this election. So I'm going to kind of piggyback on what Austin said about vote, 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 but really talk about why it matters to you so much. Within Democrats Abroad, more concretely, because I'm a leader in the global caucus, the beauty of Democrats Abroad is that we vote in all 50 states, the district. We're all over. That's why we're such a good match to be on the executive committee of the LGBTQ Caucus of the DNC, because it's going to give us really a platform to connect with the caucuses in so many different states. So there's a lot we can be doing. And, anybody who's interested and has just like a few hours a month, we've got a lot of roles that we can use some help in. So, whether that's social media, we're going to be doing all kinds of candidate profiles like we've done in the past, because we have actually a lot of underrepresentation. We may be a loud and proud community, but as far as our representation in elected office, it does not reflect the percentage that we are the population. So we're going to again do our candidate profiles. We'll be doing webinars. I don't know if any of you attended last year. We did a fantastic webinar with Senator Tammy Baldwin, and we said that we would have her back, which she very much wants to do. She's a friend of the caucus, and we have, of course, a Senate seat in Wisconsin. So we really want to be partnering with the state teams to do that. But I would really encourage anybody who's interested in playing a role, however big or small, to get in touch with the Global LGBTQ plus caucus.
Yes, definitely. It's been some amazing work. and it'd be great to see more people get involved this year. All right, Sam, what about you?
Vote, vote, vote. We can't be any simpler than that, right? It is critical that we all are ready and registered and prepared to vote in 2022. These are going to be tight races, and every vote's going to matter. And just what Martha articulated, y'all could very well be the difference. So please make sure you are eligible and registered to vote in your home state or state where you're from, pardon me. And if you'd love to get involved with the Democrats, I will drop a link if you want to get involved in our LGBTQ organizing and engagement work as we move forward. Please go to txt.democrats.org/engage. Let us know you're interested. We can get you resources on how to become a social ambassador, how you can host your own virtual community events in partnership with Dems Abroad and your caucuses, and how you can start plugging into the larger DNC volunteer network. We'd love to have you join us. So let us know. I'll drop that in the chat right now for y'all. I think someone might be already for me. Thank you. And we can go from there. I'm so excited to be here. I'll use this time to say thank you, Austin. Thank you, Martha. Thank you, Caroline. Really appreciate the time.
Thank you. Thank everybody for being here. It's been a really awesome discussion. Austin, I know that you would like to give the lovely Leslie some time to talk about voting, and then we will end this session with a Q&A.
Yep, fantastic. So I'm actually going to hand over to two different people here really quick in rapid fire succession. First to Leslie Gallagher, who is one of our wonderful leaders from votefromabroad.org, to share a little bit more about requesting your absentee ballot. And then after her, I will hand over to Nicole Sotullo to talk a bit about a great way to get involved, which is phone banking. So Leslie, over to you.
Hi, thank you so much. Thanks so much for giving me a few minutes to say this. And I'm so happy to hear vote, 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 because that's exactly a first step now. So I'm going to some of the primaries have started. So we're coming up on some deadlines. So just to say, if you can go to Vote From Abroad after the call's over and just do it tonight, it takes about 5 minutes. Most states you can do from your phone and actually use your camera to do a photo signature. So then the Vote From Abroad is the platform that basically communicates with your election official and both registers you if you're not registered and requests your ballot. And that is something that you have to do every year. Some states will send you, like California is fairly good, but there's a lot of shenanigans going on this year. So we want to make sure everybody's paperwork is ticked and tied, and we don't want, if you're going back to count votes, to get anything thrown out because there was legislatures and 36 governors. So in 2020, the abroad vote was the margin of victory in Georgia. And we make a difference. And so the more of us we can get voting, the better we'll do. A few more numbers for you. There are about 9 million Americans outside the US. Around 6.5 million of them are eligible voters. 1 million of them voted. So we have a lot of work to do to reach people. Obviously, that's not UK, that's just outside the US. But we've got a lot of work to do to reach people, and that's what we're trying to do. And we're starting with our Democrats Abroad, people in the UK. If you want to get involved at all, if you want to, certainly first stop is request your ballot. Second, please tell all of your friends, American friends, and get this. We are doing drives and all it like that. You can also know that now they're working on a campaign, which includes a lot of the target states that Sam mentioned earlier. So if you have any questions, please get in touch with us with our group and we'd be happy to help you. Thanks for the time.
Great. Thank you so much, Leslie. And thank you for all of the wonderful work you do to make sure that we can be the margin of victory in such key states. Now I am happy to hand over to another friend of mine, Nicole Satula, to just share a little bit more about a really easy, quick win way that some of you can get involved, which is through phone banking. Nicole, over to you.
All right, thanks so much, Austin, and thanks everyone for being here tonight. I am the just passed phone banking coordinator for DAUK, but our current one, Lisa, is sorry she can't be here tonight, but if you email us, you'll be communicating with her. So Democrats Abroad, one of the ways that we turn out the vote among all of our members is through phone banking. So we call pretty much all of our members every year to give them the really important information that Leslie just gave to all of us about how to find out about voting in their state, about what the deadlines are in their state. We know that it makes results. We get a lot of our members that turn back their ballots because they find out about their deadlines from phone banking. So this year we are starting earlier than ever, as we know this is such a critical year. And so we've prioritized some of the really key battleground states. As Leslie mentioned, Georgia is really key, and that is a state that Democrats Abroad helped win the Senate seats for in 2021. We can hold that seat again. So we're phone banking right now to Georgia, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina, seats we can pick up and seats we can hold. And then we'll be going through a number of other key states like Colorado. I know some of the states that Austin mentioned, on the call about Florida and Iowa and other states that are really important for LGBT issues. We will be calling them as well. We're hoping to do a UK country campaign this spring, and then go. There will be called again in the fall at the global level. So if you have not phone banked before, I'm going to post the link in the chat for how to do the training. The training is, there's like a single training. It's on video. You can watch it at your leisure. And then phone banking, because we call all around the world, it is active from 5 in the morning here until 10 or 11 at night. So it's really something where if you have 15 minutes, even if it's after you eat dinner or whatever, you can make a couple of calls and really help us out. So I would encourage everyone to please phone bank. If you're a phone maker in the past, please log in and make some calls this week. We're really trying to get everyone going as soon as possible because this is such a critical year. So thanks so much for being on, and thanks, Austin, for the time.
Great. Thank you so much, Nicole. And thank you also for all the wonderful work that you're doing to organize us in terms of phone banking and making sure that every single person who we have on the books is actually ready to go. So thank you for that. Caroline, I think I'll pass back over to you to moderate a bit of a Q&A with the time we have remaining.
Yep, I'm just going to bring back our guests. If you give me just a second. All right, so now we have time for the Q&A. I think Brett has been keeping track of questions in the chat. And if anybody has any questions coming up now, go ahead. All right, so I see we've got a question from Patrick Hurley. Patrick, if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question, you can aim it at the entire panel or one of our guests in particular.
I'm going to aim it at the target, that is Sam, with your target behind you. I was just surprised to hear you say, yeah, exactly. New Hampshire, you were listing the states, and none of them was a surprise. What's going on in New Hampshire this year with its one electoral vote?
Yes, 4 electoral votes I might count, but no, there's a very competitive Senate race in New Hampshire. Maggie Hassan is back on the ballot, and she won her race in 2016 by about 1,000 to 2,000 votes. New Hampshire is a really interesting state with politics where it has a very much like a libertarian streak. So at the state level, you will see a mismatch in comparison to what happens at the federal level in terms of how people vote all the time. And it's going to be, Maggie Hassan is in a very strong position. Her strongest challenger decided not to run, which was great news for the Democrats. But she is still going to be running a very competitive election. So we're going to be doing everything we can in New Hampshire to make sure we're mobilizing the vote.
Oh, interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, do we have anybody else in the queue who would like to ask a question to our panel? Quaid.
Oh,
He
sorry,
says,
sorry. I thought you were asking for me. It's Quaid from Germany. I was just wondering, does anybody know when the tickets for the canal? I mean, you talked about celebrate our community. When do the tickets for the Amsterdam Canal Parade go on sale?
I think this might be one for Martha.
Hi, Quaid. I don't have an answer to that yet. I think it's a global event, but I do know that all the design help available is very welcome. They just announced the theme for the parade, and each boat has to come up with a design that reflects the theme. So you might want to get in touch with DA Netherlands, who's on the ground working with the vendors that are going to be putting the boat together. And for anybody who doesn't know about that event, the Amsterdam is a canal parade. You can Google it. It's fabulous, and there's only 80 boats. And we got a boat in 2020, the dump truck boat. But of course, there was no parade in 2020, so they moved it into 2022. And it's really an opportunity, if we do something great, to get a lot of eyeballs and to get a lot of attention and even go viral. So and it's an event, you know, for DA members and friends to come to Amsterdam and participate.
Awesome. Like any way anybody wants to celebrate, we are all here for. See, Sarah, you've got a question.
Yeah, really. First of all, thank you very much to all the speakers tonight for talking, because it's, you know, this is a very this is again the most important election of our lifetimes, especially after I almost threw something at my laptop when I saw John Cornyn's remarks yesterday. Because I thought, oh, why is Obergefell trending? Oh, this is what they want to do. Yeah, I just want to know how to join, because I'm not on the mailing list for the LGBT caucus at the moment. I just want to know how to sign up and join, you know.
Yeah, well, yeah. So for the global caucus, I'll just quickly go first. You can join. You can add the caucus in your Democrats Abroad profile on the website, and you'll get all the information. We have a monthly newsletter, all that kind of stuff. And for the UK, Austin?
Yeah, I think we have access to the global caucus, but also you can just ping me an email. So lgbt@democratsabroad.org.uk. Just subject line, add me to the list, and then we'll get you on for all of our specific comms. And Brett has put it in the chat. Thank you, Brett.
Thank you, Brett. You beat me to it. All right. Do we have any other questions? All right. It sounds like we are done here. If there's anything anybody else wants to bring up to close us out.
What is everyone's preferred happy hour drink?
We can do that as a rapid fire one.
All right.
I love a good Negroni myself. And I'm not sure if everyone saw during lockdown the Stanley Tucci videos explaining how to make Negronis, but if you haven't seen that, would certainly recommend. And also, just as a point of personal privilege, want to thank Martha and Sam and Caroline for being just a wonderful and excellent panelists today. This event has gone super well, and I hope we've given people you know, some food for thought and a little bit of encouragement to get out there and get involved ahead of 2022. And thank you to everyone else who has been on this call. You've been a fantastic audience, and look forward to organizing more with you as we progress into this election cycle.
I just want to thank DA UK for organizing the event today and for all your great work, and to Sam for jumping in from DC.
And what's your cocktail, Martha?
My cocktail, you know, I like a good red wine. What can I say?
All right, Sam.
Yes, thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to join. So happy to be here. Thank you, Austin, for your leadership in pulling us all together. And right now, I'd probably say my go-to cocktail is like a good Aperol spritz. It's like spring season here in DC, so it's time for some spritzes.
Nice. All right, well, I'll close it out then. Thank you everyone for coming. We really appreciate all of our panelists being here. Thank you to Austin for getting this all up and running. And I guess for me, my cocktail is, I don't drink alcohol, so non-alcoholic beer or mocktails. So, all right. Have a great evening, everybody. We'll see you at the next one.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
All right. Well, I think that went well.
Can you go ahead and stop the recording? I don't think
Yep.
I have the power to anymore.